everybody. Welcome to Insights. Know today, build tomorrow. So, in this series, we are inviting eminent business leaders to talk about their journey so that we can learn from their today to make our tomorrow better. Today, we have with us an eminent business leader, an HR leader who thrives in a culture where people's strategies need to be very closely knit with the organization goals. With 23 years plus years of experience, she is somebody who's worked always very close with the business, addressing very important problems like employee engagement, attrition, and employee productivity. Today, we have with us CHRO of Metro Brands, Nandini Mehta. Hello, Nandini. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So, Nandini, I'm jumping right into my favorite question, which I ask to leaders, is that in this journey of yours, how have you seen the function of HR evolving over time?
So I think HR as a function is a very critical function in any organization, because no organization would be successful without its people. Having said that, I think initial years, HR always used to be looked at as a transactional function, where, they would just process the salaries, payroll was very critical. Compliance to some extent, because earlier days compliance was not that, critical as well. So that was what HR was all about. But over the years, I think the function has become a partner to the business, right? Yeah. So it's woven into the business, and if HR as a department has to be successful, it has to work very closely with the business, understand the organization's goals, and align all its activities to what the organization wants to achieve, thereby becoming more transformational than transactional. So I think that is how the function has evolved over the years.
Absolutely, right, the way you said that it is the place where everything is knit and has the view from HR. You get the total view as what is everybody, how are your people doing, and how are they aligned to the businesses, and knowing the business is critical. But as you said, like moving from that transactional role to the transformational role, as much as it's important for HR to elevate themselves to that, how important do you think the leaders play a role in that?
Very critical role, of course, because if the leaders do not have a buy-in to HR being a critical function for the organization, I don't think one can do much. As an HR leader, I've seen various business leaders who, some of them who've been very particular that HR works closely with them to ensure that we are able to develop talent, we're able to engage talent, we're able to distinguish between performers, non-performers, look at how do we work closely with them so that we can elevate employees in the organization. I've also worked with leaders who don't see these things as important. So a leader definitely plays a very critical role, because that a leader defines the culture of the organization, right? And so, while like I told you, I've worked with different kinds of leaders. I've been fortunate to work more with leaders who look at HR as a very contributing transformational function. And that has helped me deliver great success in the function. So I think they play a very critical role.
Very critical role. So now, like, it was always the changes were there, but nowadays the way the changes are happening are a little different. So from that viewpoint, being future ready has become a buzzword, that we need to keep the business ready for the future. And that earlier was a section of the people working for the future, more working today. So in that way of getting future ready, how much do you think is the seat at the table for HR to get the capabilities in place, the skills in place, to get that whole thing working?
So I think the HR function starts with an org design, right? That is where we start getting involved in the organization, where we work closely with the business leader to rather design the organization structure. And that is where we start with whether we are looking at a future-ready organization or we are looking at ensuring that the current is achieved, right? So there itself, HR works closely with the business to advise and consult uh, the business leader on what should be done, right? And being future ready is always important. So, for example, during, we've all gone through the pandemic, and there have been many businesses that have shut down, probably because they never thought from a long-term perspective. They never looked at, of course, pandemic was a very different situation, but many organizations don't look at these things very closely. They're focused on firefighting, getting things done as of today. But organizations that have looked long term have been able to survive the pandemic and, come out of the pandemic pretty well. And HR definitely plays a critical role because future-ready organizations can be different at different points in time. So if I talk about today, I think a future-ready organization is to be prepared for any such fallouts that might happen, like the pandemic. Number two is the entire disruption of AI, automation, machine learning. There is a constant, constant discussion and debate around will humans lose their jobs to robots, right? So I think the entire reskilling piece becomes very critical here, and change management. I think there is a constant requirement for employees to keep looking at how do they change themselves to adapt to technology, to adapt to AI, to look at what are the skills they can work on themselves to ensure that they don't become redundant, right? And this is where HR very critical role at a organizational vision level, right? And thereby driving things through the talent that we have.
Absolutely. Again, talking about talent, so generational. Now we have in one end. Now we talk about till one point we never spoke about the difference, because maybe the differences came in with the internet boom. I think the differences of every generation is a little more. So everybody's getting a name these days, from baby boomers to Gen Z, millennials. We have everybody now in the workforce. So do you think your strategies change because you have this multi-generation in the organizations?
So I think, interestingly, it's one of the biggest challenges too. Like you rightly said, we have all generations working today, and each generation of employees have their own idiosyncrasies, their own needs and requirements. And it becomes very difficult for HR and for the leaders in the organization to be able to deal with all of it. So I think this cannot be driven only by HR. I think as an organization, from the leader to the department, HR department, I think, and leaders of all departments, most of the leaders are typically baby boomers or the next generation. Very few are the millennials and Gen Z. So they are the ones who are at junior level or mid-level working for the baby boomers, right? So it becomes very important for us to put policies more as guidelines rather than put them as a rule book. So to give you an example, how can we look at flexi working hours? How can we look at a hybrid model of working? How can we be able to genuinely connect with our employees and work with them to ensure that they're able to balance their, personal and work life. So I think these become very important today. Apart from that, after pandemic, I think one of the biggest things that people are worried about is their health, right?
Absolutely.
Mental health, emotional health, physical health. So how can we facilitate that in the organization? So while, but again, there is a dichotomy here because organizations after pandemic have become more focused on productivity, right? And
Yeah, it's both ways.
employees have become more focused on their comfort and their life, their well-being. So it is a dichotomy, and I think HR does struggle with how to balance between the two. And the best way to do that is to partner with the business leaders and come out with policies, like I said, that are more guidelines rather than being a rule book.
Absolutely. In all these, where does culture go? I mean, we all know, as you just said, that leaders, culture is what leaders leave behind, or what leaders do becomes what employees experience. So, are you in favor of leaving it to evolve, or there are things which we feel like it should become the culture of the organization, and leaders should be very conscious right from the beginning about that?
So I'll talk about culture, in a very simple manner. At home, there are two different types of cultures. One is what the father believes in, and one is what the mother believes in. And then as children grow up, then there are multiple cultures depending on number of children in the house. So if there are 2 kids in the house, then there are 4 cultures. Right? So what I'm trying to say is it's very similar in organizations, that while there is an organization level culture which is driven by values, or the vision that the organization wants to drive, there are also micro cultures driven by every manager, every employee. And if one wants to standardize a culture, it can only be done with strict rules and strict ways of driving it. It cannot be done if the organization wants to be more fluid. Also, what happens is most of the time, organizations are more focused on performance, right? So it's typically 80% on performance. It's only 20% on how did you perform, right? It's more.
Yeah. So long you reach there,
Yeah.
not bothered how you reach.
Yeah.
It's when you don't reach, we get worried.
So very often leaders also start toggling between the guy is a great performer or the lady is a great performer, but she or he has done something which doesn't, fit into the culture requirement of the organization. So what should I do? Should I let him or her go, or should I, let go the mistake done? Of course, it also depends on the intensity of the mistake or the error. But I think most of the time organizations toggle between this. And if the business leader is not strong enough, it becomes very difficult for HR to be able to, drive culture in the organization. So I think culture is a very, very fluid concept. It comes if there is a leader who is there for years together and his team under him is there with him for years together. Then there could be some form of a way of doing things. Culture is nothing but a way of doing things, right? So that comes if the team has been there for a long time. But when that starts getting disintegrated, then cultures below start diluting. So that is how I would put this. Right. And the culture is driven by the leader. Overnight, the culture of an organization can change if a new leader comes in. And if the culture hasn't become a DNA which has been downloaded to the new leader, that this is the way you are supposed to do things. So I have worked in an organization where the culture has changed overnight with a new leader coming in. So I guess, that's what it is all about.
No, I think what you put now is like, so meaning we do not look at these things. So long things are nice and good, and as soon as the goals are not met, you kind of evaluate and all those things happen. But when things are okay, we may overlook things, that how we do it may be overlooked, and we do not know that is seeping into becoming a culture, which in the long term might hit. And it takes, And HR may be in a place to see it, but for leaders to take a call might be very difficult. They are in these difficult positions. So coming
Sorry,
to
Krishna,
then,
maybe I'll just add one more point here.
yeah.
Culture. Sometimes when you drive culture very strongly, now culture can be different, okay? So I think what becomes important rather than saying driving a particular way, particular culture in an organization, I think it's more important to drive the values of the organization, uh, which is very critical. And typically values would be around respecting one another, being more customer focused. Uh, Integrity, of course, is, at the foundation of any, the value system of an organization. Could be, execution excellence from a values perspective, right? It's important to drive
Right.
maybe speed of action. So I'm just giving you random, like, could be some of the things that we want to drive. So that is important. But let's say we drive something, a particular way of working, right? Leave the values aside, and people start doing things that way for years together, then change becomes very difficult. So I think sometimes it's important to also keep things a little more fluid rather than, have a set thought process that is driven. Of course, there are certain things which, irrespective of what is the change that is coming in, it has to be driven. For example, in an organization like ours, customer focus is very critical. Whatever we do has to revolve around the customers, right? In any organization, respecting one another, be it boss and subordinate, be it peer to peer, be it the other way around, whatever, I think that is very critical. In any organization, integrity is very, so whatever change you may do, there are certain things which still have to be there. So I think it's important for organizations to drive those 5 or 6 things, which, irrespective of what change comes into the organization, that cannot change. But driving a particular culture overall, where it becomes difficult to accept change, I think should be avoided. It should be more
avoided. Yeah. So it's aligned with the goals. It's ultimately what the organization wants to do, and keeping your set of values, you get that bit right. Yeah. Certain times, being in a change, or as you said, change, sometimes the leader wants, so it gets done, but sometimes getting certain things done takes some time. Today we hear of a lot of quick fixes, like, people want everything very fast, very fast. So so sometimes when you feel like, you have a problem statement in front of you, and the solution is a short term, there's one short term solution, one long term solution, but two will give very different results. How do you deal with those things, and what are your views of quick fixes?
So I think in any organization, there are multiple solutions to a problem, like you rightly said. One is a short term, one is a medium term, and one is a long term. So depending on the situation, I think it's very important for the leader to be able to logically put down whether a short term is workable, or a long term, or a medium term. Yeah. So I think the role of a leader in any department, not only HR, is to be able to convince the management what is the best for the organization. Right? Of course, if it is to do with a customer, we cannot wait saying, okay, we'll do it after a year. We will have to fix it short term, right? Having said that, we also have to look at how can we avoid a situation long term. So while I fix it in the short term, I will also have to look at how does that not repeat itself again, depending on the intensity of the act. So for example, I'll just talk about, let's take POSH. Yeah. I think, every woman in an organization would be going through some kind of discrimination, some kind of discomfort. A lot of women, I won't say every woman, a lot of them would, depending, on the situation that they are in. Now, one option is something has happened. We've got we've addressed it short term, right? An issue has happened. We addressed it short term. It's over. So one way of looking at this is, of course, right now it's all become mandatory, but let's assume that whole mandate was not there and we addressed it short term. However, how do I ensure as an HR head, or how does the department ensure that the same thing is not repeated again?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which would be a long-term plan where we say, okay, let's do sensitization sessions. Let's continuously talk to the women employees to check if everything is going well with them. Let us also keep an eye on, how people are behaving with each other. Let's say in a pantry, or let's say, in the informal get-togethers within the organization, which will give us a feeler of what is happening, right? So that's a long-term to the whole issue. So one is addressing an issue and then leaving it at that and saying, okay, jab hoga next time tab dekha jayega what to do. And the other is to fix it, saying that, okay, from a long-term perspective, I have to ensure this doesn't happen again. So this is what I will do. So I think everything would have, a firefighting approach many times. And then once that happens, how it doesn't happen again is something which would be a long-term view, right? So I think as a leader, it's important for one to be able to look at it from all perspectives and not just as a short-term or a long-term perspective.
Yeah, I think very well said. And this example kind of seals it, the way you explained it. Because yes, we shouldn't be like happy, yeah, this is over, which gets into more. And a real leader will say, no, it's not over. It shouldn't happen again. Nobody else should also do this. So yeah, it takes that foresight as well. So from that perspective, I would say, like, in terms of leadership, when you look at leaders and what is like, I know the challenges are different today. The challenges of a leader are very different, but what is a must have for a leader in an organization? What would you say, Kate? This should be like, there is no negotiation on that.
So I think it becomes, leaders become leaders because of certain gravitas that they have, right? It is obviously a leader normally becomes a leader because of their performance in their initial years.
Yes.
So most of the time I've realized that leaders become leaders because they've been good as performers.
Right.
And to some extent, of course, they have the potential to lead a team. Having said that, I would again go back to my 80-20, which I spoke about earlier, where most of the time, 80% of the time, it's the performance that matters, not the rest of it. And I feel as a leader, you're anyways there because you're intelligent enough to know what has to be done. So a leader has to have the ability to be able to drive the team to deliver. I probably drive is not the right word, but motivate, keep the team so motivated that they would deliver. And be able to, he or she has to be able to generate more leaders rather than create followers under him or her. I think that's a must have for any leader. Being able to be more human and humble and respect every individual for what they are. Be more of a coach, mentor, guide, rather than a taskmaster. Because I personally feel that no person is incapable of doing something. Unless he or she is in the wrong role, maybe wanting to do something else, but ended up doing something else. So it is very rarely a skill issue. Most of the time it becomes a will issue because of the circumstances that they are in, maybe not having a good manager, maybe unhappy with something else. So as a leader, I think it becomes very important to be able to understand what keeps your team motivated to deliver and keep them motivated accordingly. I think this is a must-have in any leader because that is what will drive you to achieve results.
True. Absolutely. I mean, nothing. So what keeps Nandini motivated? What has been the biggest learning for you what is the, okay, like, that is something which you have, meaning, I'm sure it is not one learning, but over the time, but what has kept you going?
I think I get motivated when I'm able to uh, be able to deliver what is given to me. And not just deliver, but ensure that it is delivered in a way that it has added value to the
Mm-hmm.
organization, to the people, being in human resources, to the people. And when
Mm-hmm.
I see my employees smiling, I'm the happiest because then I know I've done my job well. So yeah, that is what motivates me. That so if I have too many disgruntled employees, then I know I've not done my job well, right? So that is what keeps me motivated when I walk around my office and I see smiles on people's faces, when I see people are so engrossed in work that they can't think of anything else. Um, when I know the organization has been able to achieve the results, I'm happy because then I know I have talent which is motivated to work with us.
And in terms, as we were talking about technology and this, so how do you think HR should be more equipped in terms of both technology, both in terms of the way that things are changing around them? What would be your advice to your HR colleagues?
So like I told you, in HR, we have a lot of transactional activities. It becomes very important for HR to look at how do we automate these transactional activities so that we can focus more on business partnering and transformational activities. So typically, for example, of course, most organizations have payroll automated, but there are a set of common questions that employees continuously have. How can we use a chatbot to ensure that these questions are answered through them because they are repetitive, similar, standard
Mm-hmm.
questions and
Mm-hmm.
answers, so that we are able to address issues which are more unique to individuals. So it
Mm-hmm.
gives us the time and breather to be able to address individual concerns and issues. Uh, Learning, for example,
Yeah.
how do we automate a lot of learning, because today most people do not have the patience of sitting through an 8-hour session in a closed room. Not only today, I think it's been like that for years. It's just that earlier that was the only form of training, so there was no choice. But if you talk to probably my generation or your generation, they would say that we used to go for a training because we used to get food and we used to be able to connect with people we otherwise would never meet. So the reasons for training would be everything else but a learning,
The mm,
right? So I think micro learning, self-paced learning, uh, giving modules to individuals that they are interested to learn about. I think those become very critical for HR to work on. Looking at what are the things that can be moved out of an individual intervention, as in when I say a person's intervention, into
huh.
automation, and then focus on things where I could add more value and ensure that the business delivers what it has to deliver. So I think it becomes very important for HR to look at all, not only HR, every department, to look at what are the things they can automate and what are the things that can continue with us. I guess as companies are getting more focused on productivity, on results, outcomes, uh, obviously they also look at how can we have lesser people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get more
Mm.
done with less. It's a
Yes. Yeah.
it's a normal phenomenon where
Mm-hmm.
we always look at how can we get more done with less. And uh, with that, HR is always looked at as a cost center more than profit center. And therefore, one department that is always questioned on why do you need so many people? Unfortunately, because
Mm-hmm.
the amount of work HR does, uh, it's not very visible to many people. But that's the unfortunate thing, right? And many leaders also do not see that. So they always question, why does HR need such a large team? But nobody understands that HR is not just HR. There is recruitment, there is training, there is payroll, there is compliance, there is grievance handling, uh, there is onboarding, there is an employee life cycle that has to be managed. So having said that, if that's how it is, we also have to look at ways where we can do more with less. Right. So it's important that we look at everything that can be automated, yet not lose the personal touch with our employees. So yes, and that goes for every department. I think today it's very important for departments to look at how can they automate a lot of things so that there is standardization, there is there is synergy in terms of getting things done in a certain way. And even if someone is not there, this process continues if it is automated, right? Yes. And focus more on value-added services, keeping basic stuff automated. So I think that's the whole way HR has to look. Not, like I said, not only HR, but every function will have to look from a futuristic perspective.
Yeah. Nandini, I'll stop here and close. But if you want anything specifically, anything else to be asked?
I think more than anything to be asked, I just want to leave a message for everyone. I see a lot of, many times I see these not so interesting for me being an HR professional jokes on HR. Where we say HR is only there to drive fun activities. I would urge every employee, I would urge every department to spend some time in HR to understand the kind of struggle that an HR department goes through to make the lives of their employees easy. What is the kind of work that goes into ensuring that every employee gets his or her salary on time? What's the kind of work that goes into ensuring that we are able to get you the right talent through our recruitment process? What is the kind of work that goes through deciding on training interventions, development interventions for every employee? So I would urge everyone to try and understand what HR is all about before making these interesting comments in a pantry in your office, or when there is a get together that you'll have. I think it's very important. So respect every department is what I would say, because every department is there in an organization for a reason. So I will leave everyone with that thought. And also just to let you all know, I wasn't, from the beginning, I wasn't in HR. I've been an operations person. I was part of the business team, then moved into training and then HR. So I do understand the entire journey. And I respect every department, every function, because I think without each of these departments, I don't think we would coexist. So I just leave all of you with that thought. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sudeshna, for giving me this platform to share my thoughts. Love the session.
Thank you, Nandini. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching us. And this conversation, which it was just a conversation which we had, and it was so good to hear Nandini recap certain things, which was very obvious, but we do not see. It's so important for all of us to coexist. All of us are important. All of us should be respectful to each other, and leaders need to keep their teams motivated to deliver results. And we now really know that keeping a smile on the employee's face will at least make Nandini very happy. So thank you, Nandini, for that. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thanks a lot, Sudeshna. Thank you so much.
Nandini's interview and all the other interviews with the eminent leaders are on our YouTube playlist of Insights, Know Today, Build Tomorrow. So please subscribe to our channels and keep watching this space. Thank you.